In a packed courtroom in Cook County, Chicago, a young man named Marcus Johnson sat at the defendant's table, his heart pounding like a drum. At just 19 years old, he found himself facing serious charges, grand theft auto and resisting arrest. The air was thick with tension, and the spectators whispered nervously among themselves as they observed the trial unfold. Marcus, with his sharp gaze and composed demeanor, had his hands tucked into his pockets and his chin slightly lifted, radiating an unexpected confidence. Seated at the front was Judge Thomas Harrison, who looked down at Marcus with an air of disdain. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming impatiently against the polished wood of his desk. "You think you're some kind of legal expert, kid? This isn't a debate team," he mocked, eliciting chuckles from the courtroom. The bailiff, the court reporter, and even the prosecutor, a man named David Ross, shared in the laughter, everyone except Marcus, who remained unfazed. He had spent years preparing for this very moment, although he never imagined he would find himself in such a position. While his peers were memorizing sports stats, Marcus had immersed himself in case law. His mother, Linda Johnson, had worked as a paralegal for over 20 years, regaling him with stories about courtroom injustices. By the age of 14, he could analyze a trial better than many first-year law students. Yet to Judge Harrison, he was simply another black teenager in trouble. "Let's wrap this up quickly," Judge Harrison sighed, flipping through the case file. "I have a tea time at 2. The audience chuckled again, but Marcus felt a shift within himself. He couldn't help but smirk subtly. The judge had just made a critical error, one that could turn the tide of the trial. As the prosecution began, David Ross stood confidently, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, projecting the ease of someone who had delivered this speech countless times before. "Your Honor, the state will prove without a doubt that the defendant, Marcus Johnson, was caught in a stolen vehicle, a 2021 Tesla Model 3, reported missing just hours before his arrest. Officers chased him through the streets of South Chicago, where he allegedly tried to escape before being apprehended. His fingerprints were found on the steering wheel." The gallery stirred, whispers rippling through as the case appeared straightforward. But Marcus, seasoned in the art of courtroom dynamics, sensed the cracks in the prosecution's case. He remained silent for now, waiting for the right moment to strike back. The judge tapped his gavel lightly. "Let's hear the defense's arguments." He turned to Marcus's lawyer, a public defender named Sarah Mitchell, who had barely spoken since entering the courtroom. She stood up, visibly anxious. "Your Honor, my client." But before she could continue, Marcus placed a hand gently on her arm, signaling her to stop. He took a deep breath and stood tall. "I'll be representing myself, Your Honor," he stated firmly, a calm resolve in his voice. As the courtroom fell silent, Marcus turned to face the jury, locking eyes with them. "Let's address that evidence for a moment," he began. The room was still, and he knew all eyes were on him. This was the beginning of a battle not just for his freedom but for justice. As the tension mounted, the reactions of the audience became palpable. Some leaned forward, eager to hear what Marcus would say, while others exchanged glances filled with uncertainty. It was a courtroom where the stakes were high, and everyone could sense that something significant was about to unfold. As you follow Marcus's journey, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. And we encourage you to stay tuned for more inspiring stories from Flourishing Tales. As the tension in the courtroom simmered, Marcus Johnson stood resolute, ready to confront the challenges that lay ahead. Judge Thomas Harrison, a figure of authority with a reputation for being both strict and dismissive, glanced over his glasses at the young defendant. The judge's demeanor suggested he was eager to wrap things up and move on to his next engagement, a golf game that loomed large in his mind. "Let's get to the point," Judge Harrison sighed, flipping through the case file with an air of impatience. "I don't have all day." His words hung in the air, and the audience felt a collective unease. It was clear that the judge viewed this trial as just another routine case, one that he expected to resolve with minimal fuss. David Ross, the prosecutor, stood confidently at his table, He was a man who thrived on the courtroom spotlight, his tailored suit and polished shoes a testament to his professionalism. "Your Honor, the evidence against Mr. Johnson is overwhelming," he began, his voice smooth and assured. "The state will demonstrate that the defendant was caught in a stolen Tesla Model 3, reported missing just hours before his arrest. Officers pursued him through the streets of South Chicago, where he attempted to flee before being apprehended. His fingerprints were found on the steering wheel, a clear indication of his guilt." The courtroom murmured as spectators exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement while others appeared skeptical. At a glance, the case seemed straightforward, but Marcus had spent years studying the intricacies of law and had a keen sense of how to spot the flaws in the prosecution's narrative. "Now the defense may try to convince you that this was all a misunderstanding," Ross continued, his gaze locking onto Marcus. "But let's be honest, what kind of victim runs from the police?" The room grew still, and all eyes shifted to Marcus, who remained composed, refusing to show any emotion. Judge Harrison leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand, his interest piqued. "Go on," he instructed Ross, who took a few steps toward the jury box, his shoes clicking against the marble floor. "The prosecution will present testimony from Officer Michael Adams, who witnessed Mr. Johnson behind the wheel before he attempted to flee." Ross stated confidently, "The arrest was conducted according to protocol, and the evidence is solid." He paused for effect, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the minds of the jury. As Ross continued, Marcus felt the tension in the room shift. He knew he had to act soon. The judge's dismissive attitude and the prosecutor's confidence only fueled his determination to fight for justice. Finally, it was time for the defense to respond. Judge Harrison turned to Sarah Mitchell, the public defender assigned to Marcus. She stood up, visibly nervous and fumbling with her notes. "Your Honor, my client," she began, but Marcus gently placed a hand on her arm, asking her to let him take the lead. With a deep breath, Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady and firm. "I'll be representing myself, Your Honor," he declared, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. He glanced at the jury, confidence radiating from him. "Let's talk about that evidence." The gallery fell silent, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Marcus was about to challenge the prosecution's case, and the eyes of the courtroom were fixed on him. In this moment, he was not just a defendant. He was a man ready to reclaim his narrative and fight against the injustices that had brought him here. As the spectators leaned in, eager to witness the unfolding drama, Marcus knew that this was only the beginning. His journey was far from over, and he was determined to make his voice heard. Join us as we follow Marcus's fight against the odds. Share your thoughts in the comments below and stay tuned for more stories that inspire change, only on Flourishing Tales. As the courtroom settled into a tense silence, Marcus Johnson stood confidently at the front, ready to confront the allegations against him. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air, and he could feel the eyes of the jury upon him, waiting to see how he would navigate the challenge ahead. With a calm yet determined demeanor, he prepared to dismantle the prosecution's case piece by piece. "Your Honor," Marcus began, addressing Judge Harrison directly, "I appreciate the opportunity to speak on my own behalf." His voice resonated through the courtroom, drawing the attention of everyone present. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, feeling the energy shift as he stepped into the role of his own advocate. "The prosecution wants you to believe that because my fingerprints were found on a stolen car, I must have been the one who stole it," he stated, his tone steady. "But let's think about this logically. Imagine you walk into a store, try on a jacket, and then put it back on the rack. A few hours later, that jacket gets stolen. Would the fact that your fingerprints are on it make you a thief?" A few jurors exchanged glances, intrigued by his analogy. Marcus could sense their engagement. He was making them think critically, and that was a significant first step, he continued. "The Tesla in question was parked outside a convenience store hours before I was arrested. I was inside that store with friends when the alleged theft occurred. Yes, I leaned against the car and even opened the door, but I did not drive it or take anything from it. I was simply curious." The courtroom was silent, the spectator absorbing his argument. Marcus paused, letting his words sink in before pressing forward. "Does touching something automatically make you a criminal?" he asked, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. David Ross, the prosecutor, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly taken aback by Marcus's unexpected eloquence. "Your Honor," Marcus continued, addressing Judge Harrison again, "I would like to discuss how the fingerprint analysis was conducted. Was the forensic specialist who processed my fingerprints called to testify?" Judge Harrison blinked, caught off guard by the question. He glanced at Ross, who hesitated before muttering, "No." The courtroom buzzed with whispers, and Marcus seized the moment. "So let me get this straight. The prosecution is relying on forensic evidence to convict me, yet they didn't think it was necessary to bring in the specialist who processed that evidence. I have no chance to cross-examine or challenge the accuracy of the analysis." The tension in the room grew palpable as Marcus's words hung in the air. He could see the judge's expression shift, a flicker of realization crossing his face that this case was not as straightforward as he had initially believed. Marcus was gaining ground, and he could feel the momentum on his side. With determination, he took a step closer to the jury, locking eyes with them. "The truth is, I was arrested blocks away from where the vehicle was abandoned. I wasn't in the car. I wasn't fleeing from anything. The only thing connecting me to this case is poor police work and assumptions based on my appearance." His voice resonated with sincerity, and he could see the jury beginning to consider his perspective. As the courtroom murmured, Marcus pressed on. "The real suspect got away that night. Officers found a black kid in the vicinity and decided that was enough to make an arrest. This case is not just about me. It's about how the system often fails those it is meant to protect." The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. Spectators leaned in, captivated by Marcus's impassioned defense. He was not just fighting for his freedom. He was challenging the very foundation of a system that had so often overlooked the truth. As his words resonated with the jury, Marcus knew he had ignited a spark of doubt in the prosecution's case. The battle was far from over, but he was ready to continue fighting for his truth and for those who had been silenced. As we follow Marcus's courageous journey, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspectives are important, and we encourage you to stay tuned for more inspiring stories from Flourishing Tales. As Marcus Johnson continued his defense, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted dramatically. His earlier arguments had begun to resonate with the jury, creating a palpable sense of tension as he prepared to deliver the final blow against the prosecution's case. The stakes were high, and everyone in the room could feel the weight of the moment. With unwavering confidence, Marcus took a deep breath and faced the jury directly. "Your Honor, I would like to submit an official statement from the registered owner of the vehicle in question," he declared, his voice steady and commanding. Judge Thomas Harrison raised an eyebrow. Intrigued. "The owner?" he asked, looking skeptical. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Raymond Brooks, the owner of the stolen Tesla, provided a statement to the police that has not been submitted in the prosecution's filings. I believe this is crucial evidence that has been conveniently overlooked," Marcus asserted, his expression unwavering. The courtroom fell silent as Marcus retrieved a printed transcript from his files and held it up for everyone to see. "I have here a statement from Mr. Brooks," he said. "I left my car running while I went inside the store. Someone must have jumped in and taken off, but it wasn't the kid you arrested. I saw the kid and he was white." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom at his revelation. The spectators exchanged shocked glances, and Marcus could sense the shift in the room's energy. He continued, "This is from the original police report, the same report that the prosecution has chosen to ignore." He turned back to Judge Harrison, his voice firm. "The arresting officer omitted this vital information from his testimony, and yet they want this jury to believe that I am guilty beyond a reasonable doubt." David Ross, the prosecutor, stepped forward, visibly rattled. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The defendant was caught in possession of the vehicle," he argued, trying to regain control of the narrative. But Marcus was undeterred. "No, I wasn't," he countered, his voice cutting through the tension. "I was arrested blocks away from where the vehicle was abandoned, walking home after getting snacks with my friends. The only thing tying me to this case is flawed police work and assumptions based on my race." The jury sat in rapt attention, and Marcus could see their expressions change as they processed his words. This was not just about a stolen car. It was about systemic issues that plagued the justice system. The real suspect got away that night because officers decided to focus on the nearest black kid rather than pursuing the actual thief, he declared, his voice strong and resolute. This case illustrates the danger of assumptions and biases that can lead to wrongful accusations. Judge Harrison cleared his throat, rubbing his temple as he absorbed the weight of Marcus's arguments. The case was unraveling, and everyone in the room could sense it. Marcus turned back to the jury, his eyes filled with determination. "I urge you to consider the facts, not just the narrative presented by the prosecution. I am not a criminal. I am a victim of circumstance and prejudice." As the judge leaned forward, the tension in the courtroom reached a boiling point. After a long pause, he finally addressed the room. "Does the prosecution have anything further to add?" he asked, glancing at Ross, whose face was flushed with frustration. "No, Your Honor," Ross replied tersely, defeated. The air was thick with anticipation as Judge Harrison took a moment to gather his thoughts. Finally, he leaned forward and spoke the words that would change everything. "Case dismissed." A stunned silence descended upon the courtroom, followed by an eruption of chaos. Some spectators gasped in disbelief, while others erupted in quiet relief. Reporters furiously scribbled notes, and Marcus stood still for a moment, allowing the reality of the moment to sink in. He had done it. He had fought back against the odds. As he turned to leave, a voice called out from behind him, "Mr. Johnson." He paused and looked back at Judge Harrison, who had an unreadable expression on his face. "You should consider law school." A small smile crept across Marcus's face. He didn't need to think about it. He was already on his way. As Marcus stepped outside, the air was electric with excitement. Reporters swarmed him, microphones thrust forward, eager for a statement, but he brushed past them, focusing on the figure waiting for him at the bottom of the steps. His mother, Linda, she looked at him with pride and relief, and when they embraced, he felt the weight of their shared journey. This victory was just the beginning. As they walked away from the courthouse, Marcus knew that his fight for justice was far from over. As you follow Marcus's journey, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice is important, and we encourage you to stay tuned for more inspiring stories from Flourishing Tales. As the chaos of the courtroom subsided, Marcus Johnson took a moment to absorb the reality of what had just transpired. The judge's words, "Case dismissed," echoed in his mind, a powerful affirmation of his struggle against the injustice he had faced. He stood still for a moment, allowing the weight of the moment to settle in. This wasn't just a personal victory, it was a statement against a flawed system that had so often failed individuals like him. As he stepped outside into the bright Chicago sunlight, he was met with a flurry of activity. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, their cameras flashing like strobe lights, eager to capture the moment. "Marcus, did you expect the judge to dismiss the case?" one reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone toward him. Another asked, "What are you going to do next?" The questions came at him from all angles, but Marcus felt a wave of calm wash over him. He had just defied the odds, and he wasn't about to get caught up in the spectacle. Instead, he scanned the crowd until his eyes landed on a familiar figure. His mother, Linda Johnson, standing at the bottom of the steps with an expression of pride and relief. As he made his way toward her, he could see the tension in her shoulders ease. They embraced tightly, and Marcus felt the warmth of her love and support envelop him. "You scared me half to death," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "Had to take a risk, Mom," he replied, chuckling lightly as he scratched the back of his head. "But it was worth it." Linda pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "You always were the stubborn one," she said, a hint of a smile breaking through her initial concern. As they turned to leave, the murmurs of the crowd followed them. Some spectators shook their heads in disbelief, while others nodded in approval, recognizing the significance of what had just occurred. Among the onlookers were young black men who had seen themselves in Marcus, individuals who understood all too well how easily the system could have swallowed him whole. Marcus felt a sense of responsibility for them. His victory was not just for him, but for all those who had been unjustly accused or marginalized. Once they reached their car, Linda turned to Marcus with a serious expression. "You know this isn't the end, right?" she said softly. "You won today, but this fight, it's bigger than one case." Marcus nodded, the weight of her words resonating deeply within him. He had won a battle, but the war against systemic injustice was ongoing. That evening, as they sat at their kitchen table with the soft glow of the television flickering in the background, Linda placed her hand over his. "You need to do something with this, baby," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "Most kids in your situation wouldn't have had a chance. You fought back because you knew how. But what about the ones who don't?" Her words struck a chord in Marcus. He knew she was right. He had spent years preparing for this moment, and it was time to use his knowledge and experiences to help others. The following morning, the news of his courtroom triumph spread like wildfire. His face was plastered across television screens, and headlines flooded social media. "Teen defends himself in court, exposes corrupt case. Marcus Johnson stuns judge, wins freedom. Chicago teen outsmarts prosecutor in shocking courtroom battle." His phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from reporters and people he hadn't spoken to in years. But one email captured his attention. A message from a civil rights attorney in Washington, D.C. "Marcus, I saw your case. We need more minds like yours in this fight. If you're interested, I'd love to talk." As he read the email, his heart raced with excitement and purpose. Weeks passed, and life began to settle back into a routine. But Marcus hadn't forgotten the power of his victory. Late one evening, he sat down with his mother again at the kitchen table. "I've been thinking," he said quietly. "I don't just want to be another person who got lucky. I want to help. I want to make sure the next kid in that courtroom doesn't need luck." Linda's eyes softened, pride shimmering in them. "Law school?" she asked, a smile forming on her lips. Marcus nodded, feeling a newfound determination surge within him. Law school. Years later, when Marcus stepped into a courtroom again, he was no longer the defendant. He was the defense attorney. Standing at the counsel's desk, briefcase in hand, and eyes sharp, he was ready to advocate for those who had been silenced. This time, he was not alone. He had dedicated his life to fighting for justice, standing up for those who had been overlooked, ensuring that the system served its true purpose. As we continue to follow Marcus's inspiring journey, we encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and we invite you to stay tuned for more uplifting stories from Flourishing Tales. Years passed since that pivotal day in the courtroom when Marcus Johnson had stunned the legal world with his self-defense. He had transformed from a young man wrongfully accused into a passionate advocate for justice. Now, as he stood in front of the imposing doors of the courthouse, wearing a tailored suit that exuded confidence, Marcus was ready to embark on a new chapter of his life. After graduating from law school with honors, Marcus had built a reputation as a tenacious defense attorney. He was not just a symbol of hope for those who had faced injustice. He was a voice for the voiceless. Every case he took on resonated with his personal experience, fueling his commitment to fight against the systemic biases that had once threatened to consume him. As he entered the courthouse, he was greeted by familiar faces. Court staff, fellow attorneys, and even some of the reporters who had covered his original trial. Their expressions conveyed a mix of respect and curiosity. They had witnessed his rise from a defendant to a respected member of the legal community, and many had followed his journey closely. Today, Marcus was representing a young woman named Jasmine, who had been wrongfully accused of theft after being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The case felt eerily familiar, but Marcus was determined to ensure that Jasmine would not endure the same injustices he had faced. He had spent hours researching the details of her case, preparing a defense that would highlight the flaws in the prosecution's narrative. In the courtroom, Judge Thomas Harrison presided over the proceedings once again. The same judge who had dismissed Marcus's case years earlier now looked at him with a mixture of recognition and respect. "Mr. Johnson," he acknowledged, "I see you've come a long way since our last encounter." "Thank you, Your Honor," Marcus replied, his voice steady as he met the judge's gaze. "I'm here to ensure that justice is served." As the trial began, Marcus presented his case with the same passion and clarity that had characterized his own defense years earlier. He challenged the prosecution's evidence, dissecting their arguments and exposing the inconsistencies in witness testimonies. The jury listened intently, captivated by his methodical approach and unwavering conviction. Throughout the trial, Marcus could see Jasmine's anxiety slowly dissipate. He knew that he was not just fighting for her freedom, he was fighting to restore her dignity and to prove that she was more than just a label. As he spoke, he could feel the energy in the room shifting, the jury beginning to grasp the truth of Jasmine's situation. During a break, Marcus stepped outside the courtroom to gather his thoughts. He looked up at the sky, a sense of determination welling within him. He thought about all the young people who had been silenced by a system that often overlooked them, just as he had once been. He envisioned a future where others would have the same opportunities he had fought for, a future where justice was accessible to everyone, regardless of their background. Returning to the courtroom, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He concluded his arguments with a powerful statement. The law is not just about rules and regulations, it's about people. It's about recognizing the humanity in each individual, and it's about ensuring that justice prevails, not just for the few, but for all. As the trial came to a close, the jury deliberated, and Marcus could feel the anticipation in the air. He knew that whatever the outcome, he had made a difference. He had fought for Jasmine and for all those who had felt powerless in the face of injustice. Finally, the jury returned with their verdict. As they announced Jasmine's acquittal, tears of joy streamed down her face. Marcus felt a swell of pride and relief wash over him. He had done it again. He had helped another person reclaim their life. As they exited the courthouse together, Jasmine turned to Marcus with gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you for believing in me," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "You deserved that belief," he replied. "And this is just the beginning. We have so much work to do." As they stepped into the sunlight, Marcus knew that he would continue to fight for justice, not just as an attorney, but as a catalyst for change. His journey had come full circle, and he was committed to ensuring that the next generation would have the support and guidance to navigate a system that had once tried to break him. As you follow Marcus's inspiring journey, we encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and we invite you to stay tuned for more uplifting stories from Flourishing Tales.